What if I told you that your daily bread is poisoning you? What if I told you that the bread you've been buying from Tesco, Sainsbury's and Asda contains chemicals that Europe banned decades ago because they cause cancer in laboratory animals? I'm talking about ingredients like potassium, bromate that cause kidney and thyroid tumors, and azodicarbonamide, the same chemical used to make yoga mats and shoe soles, both banned across Europe but still perfectly legal in UK bread. If you're over 60, this matters even more. Your body can't detoxify chemicals like it used to. These additives accumulate in your tissues, causing damage that increases your cancer risk with every slice you eat. In this video, I'm exposing 7 major UK bread brands that use Europe-banned ingredients, from Warburtons to Hovis to Kingsmill. Stay with me, because number 3 is something you've probably eaten this week, maybe even this morning. Number 7. Kingsmill. Using dough conditioners Europe won't touch. Allied Bakeries, the company behind Kingsmill, Allinson's, Bergen and Sunblest, uses dough conditioners that Europe banned years ago. These chemicals speed up production and make bread fluffier, but they come with serious health risks that European regulators decided weren't worth taking. The Chorleywood bread process, which Kingsmill uses, replaces traditional slow fermentation with a high-speed mixer and a cocktail of chemical improvers. This process strips away nutritional value, bleaches and sterilizes the flour, and requires adding back synthetic vitamins and minerals because the natural ones were destroyed. Which investigated 11 wholemeal loaves and found that Kingsmill's so-called wholemeal bread contained multiple types of flour beyond wholemeal, including fermented wheat flour. Allied Bakeries claimed they used this to keep the loaf fresh longer, but what they're really doing is extending shelf life artificially with chemicals instead of using proper baking methods. Europe banned many of these chemical improvers because studies showed they affect nutritional quality, degrade essential vitamins, and pose long-term health risks. But in the UK, they're still used every single day in millions of loaves because speed and profit matter more than safety. For seniors especially, this is a big deal. Your digestive system is more sensitive now. Chemicals that younger people might tolerate cause more problems as you age. The synthetic additives in Kingsmill bread put extra strain on your liver and kidneys, organs that are already working less efficiently than they used to. And here's what really bothers me about Kingsmill. They market themselves as a family brand, as wholesome and traditional. But there's nothing traditional about bread made with 20+ chemical additives in an industrial high-speed mixer. Real bread needs 4 ingredients: flour, water, yeast, and salt. That's it. Kingsmill uses far more than that. And most of those extra ingredients serve corporate profits, not your health. The company knows this. They know consumers are becoming more aware of additives and chemicals. That's why they use vague terms like dough conditioner without specifying exactly which chemicals they're using. They hide behind technical language and regulatory loopholes, counting on you not to read the fine print or understand what it means. The Chorleywood process was invented in the 1960s specifically to make bread production faster and cheaper. Before that, bread required hours of slow fermentation that developed flavor naturally and made nutrients more bioavailable. Traditional fermentation breaks down phytic acid, which blocks mineral absorption. It creates beneficial compounds that support gut health. It develops complex flavors that come from the interaction between flour, water, yeast, and thyme. But time costs money. Slow fermentation means you need more space, more equipment, more labor. You can't turn ingredients into finished loaves in 3.5 hours like the Chorleywood process does. So Allied Bakeries chose profit over quality, and your health suffers for it. The chemical improvers they use include ascorbic acid in excessive amounts, fungal alpha amylase, soya flour as a bleaching agent, and emulsifiers like E472E and E481. These additives force dough to behave in ways it naturally wouldn't, creating an artificial texture that mimics real bread but lacks the nutritional integrity. Number 6. Hovis and the wholemeal deception. Hovis, one of Britain's most iconic bread brands, has been misleading consumers for years about what's actually in their wholemeal loaves. Regulations clearly state that the name wholemeal can only be used if all the flour used as an ingredient is wholemeal. But which? Found that Hovis wholemeal bread contains multiple non-wholemeal flours, When confronted, Hovis claimed these other flours weren't being used as flour ingredients, but as carriers or bulking agents, which they say puts them outside the scope of regulations. That's corporate double talk. If it's flour and it's in your bread, it's a flour ingredient, period. Every Hovis wholemeal loaf tested contained soya flour, fortified wheat flour, and other additives. The company adds soya flour to improve volume and crumb softness, essentially using cheaper ingredients to make their bread seem better quality than it actually is. But the bigger issue is what Europe banned that's likely still in Hovis products: potassium bromate residues from flour treatment. Even though potassium bromate is supposed to convert to harmless bromide during baking, UK testing has proven that measurable amounts remain in finished bread products. Potassium bromate is classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as possibly carcinogenic to humans. Animal studies showed it causes tumors in the kidneys and thyroids. The chemical also disrupts thyroid function, which is already a major concern for seniors, particularly women after menopause. Europe banned it in the early 1990s. China banned it. India, Canada, Brazil, and over 40 countries said this chemical is too dangerous for human consumption. But the UK allows it, and companies like Hovis benefit from using flour treated with it because it makes dough rise higher and production faster. For seniors with thyroid problems, with kidney issues, or with any kind of hormonal imbalance, eating bread that contains bromate residues is genuinely dangerous. Your thyroid might already be underactive. Your kidneys might already be struggling. Adding a chemical that specifically damages those organs is asking for serious health problems. And Hovis knows all this. They know European standards are stricter. They know the science shows potential harm. But they continue using these processes because changing would cost money, and profits matter more than protecting customers who've been loyal to the brand for decades. The thyroid disruption from potassium bromate is particularly insidious because symptoms develop slowly. You might experience fatigue, weight gain, depression, cold intolerance, dry skin, and thinning hair. But you attribute these to aging, not to the bread you're eating every morning. Your doctor might test your thyroid and find it's borderline underactive, but not quite bad enough to treat. Meanwhile, you keep eating bromate-contaminated bread, making the problem worse. And for seniors already taking thyroid medication, bromate exposure could be interfering with how well your medication works. You might need to keep increasing your dose, not because your thyroid is getting worse, but because environmental toxins, including food additives, are disrupting your endocrine system. Number 5. Warburtons using calcium propionate banned. In Europe, Warburtons, the UK's most popular bread brand, with 84% of the population buying it regularly, uses calcium propionate as a preservative. This additive inhibits mold growth and gives their bread a 6-day shelf life. Europe banned it years ago after studies linked it to behavioral changes in children and other health concerns. A 2002 study in the Journal of Pediatric Child Health found that calcium propionate caused behavioral problems in children, including irritability, restlessness, attention difficulties, and sleep disturbances. Europe looked at this evidence and decided the risk wasn't worth taking. The UK looked at the same evidence and said it's fine as long as amounts stay below certain limits. But here's what nobody talks about. Those limits were set based on average consumption by healthy adults. They didn't consider seniors whose bodies process chemicals differently, whose liver and kidney function is reduced, whose metabolic systems are already stressed. Warburtons openly admits on their website that they use calcium propionate because it allows them to bake 2 million products per day with a 6-day shelf life. They frame this as providing value for consumers, but what they're really doing is prioritizing industrial-scale production over food safety. Real bread doesn't need preservatives if you bake it properly and expect people to eat it fresh. Traditional bakeries make bread daily without any chemical preservatives because it's meant to be consumed within a day or two. But that doesn't work for a company trying to distribute millions of loaves across the entire country and keep them on shelves for a week. For seniors, calcium propionate adds to your toxic burden. Your body has to process this chemical every time you eat Warburtons bread. Your liver has to break it down. Your kidneys have to eliminate it. And if you're eating this bread daily, which many people do, that's constant low-level exposure to a chemical Europe decided was too risky. The behavioral changes documented in children might manifest differently in seniors. Instead of hyperactivity, you might experience brain fog, confusion, sleep problems, or mood changes that you attribute to aging when they're actually caused by chemical additives in your food. Recent research has also linked calcium propionate to metabolic disruption. A study published in Science Translational Medicine found that this preservative increased blood sugar levels and insulin resistance in mice. The researchers found that calcium propionate activates fatty acid receptors that trigger hormones involved in glucose production, essentially making your body produce more sugar from stored sources. For seniors, many of whom are already dealing with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, eating bread with calcium propionate could be making their blood sugar control worse. You might be taking medication, watching your diet, exercising regularly, but still struggling with high blood sugar because the bread you're eating every day is working against you. And there's emerging evidence that calcium propionate might affect gut bacteria composition. Your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive system, plays crucial roles in immunity, metabolism, mental health, and inflammation control. Disrupting that balance with daily preservative exposure could contribute to a cascade of health problems that seem unrelated to what you're eating. Number 4. Allinson's using multiple banned flour treatments. Allinson markets itself as the baker's bread, old-fashioned, traditional, the kind your grandparents might have trusted. The packaging screams authenticity, rustic fonts, earthy colors, words like wholesome and wholemeal. But peel back that label, and what you find is a modern industrial loaf filled with tricks, shortcuts, and chemicals that Europe doesn't want anywhere near your food. Allinson's, owned by Allied Bakeries, claims to use fermented wheat flour for flavor and freshness. Sounds artisanal, doesn't it? The kind of thing you'd expect from a slow sourdough recipe. But this isn't sourdough. It's a cost-saving tactic. By partially fermenting cheaper wheat, the company extends shelf life and improves texture without paying for high-quality wholemeal flour. It's science, not craftsmanship, and not the kind consumers believe they're buying. A witch. Investigation found that Allinson's classic wholemeal loaf contained 4 different types of flour. 4. Wholemeal, white, malted, and fermented wheat flour are all blended together to create something that looks brown enough to pass as healthy. But real wholemeal bread, by law, should be made entirely from wholemeal flour. What Allinson sells is a hybrid, part wholemeal, part filler. A loaf that promises nutrition and delivers deception. The deeper issue isn't just the flours, it's the Chorleywood bread process, the same industrial method responsible for most supermarket bread. This process relies on a cocktail of chemical dough conditioners, emulsifiers, and enzymes, many of which fall into a legal grey area. They're classified as processing aids, which means they don't have to appear on your ingredients label. You read flour, yeast, salt, water, and think you're safe. But what you're actually eating includes additives that manipulate texture, speed fermentation, and keep loaves soft for days longer than natural bread ever could. These hidden additives are not harmless. Enzymes used in the dough can trigger allergic reactions. Some bakery workers develop occupational asthma from breathing flour dust containing these enzymes. If they're causing respiratory problems in workers, what are they doing to your digestive system when you eat them? Emulsifiers like E472E and E471, common in UK loaves, are linked to gut inflammation and metabolic disruption. Recent research from Georgia State University found that these emulsifiers alter the composition of gut bacteria in ways that promote inflammation and metabolic syndrome. The study showed that mice fed these emulsifiers developed obesity, glucose intolerance, and inflammatory bowel disease. And bleaching agents used to whiten flour strip away nutrients, reducing fiber absorption and damaging beneficial compounds. The bran and germ of wheat contain most of the vitamins, minerals, and fiber. When flour is bleached and refined, you lose vitamin E, B vitamins, iron, magnesium, selenium, and beneficial plant compounds called phenolic acids that protect against oxidative stress. Europe banned or heavily restricted several of these treatments years ago, not because of hysteria, but because long-term studies found they could contribute to chronic conditions when consumed regularly over decades. So every time you bite into a slice of Allinson's classic wholemeal, remember, You're not eating the simple, hearty bread you think you are. You're eating a chemically engineered product built to last longer on shelves, not longer in your body. You're consuming up to 26 different additives that weren't necessary when your grandparents baked bread that aren't. And used in traditional European bakeries that serve corporate convenience rather than your nutritional needs. Number 3. Nature's Own and the azodicarbonamide scandal. Nature's Own bread made headlines in 2014 when it was revealed that they used azodicarbonamide, also called ADA, as a dough conditioner. This is the infamous yoga mat chemical that's banned in Europe, Australia, and over 40 other countries. ADA is used to bleach flour and make dough more elastic and easier to work with in industrial bakeries. But when you bake bread containing ADA, it breaks down into urethane and semicarbazide, both classified as probable carcinogens. After public outcry, Nature's Own announced it'd remove ADA from its bread. Great. But they still use multiple other dough conditioners that Europe won't allow, including datem, sodium stearoyl lactylate, monoglycerides, and diglycerides. These conditioners are made by chemically manipulating fats, often soybean oil or corn oil, which are almost certainly genetically modified. So you're not just eating chemical conditioners, you're eating the GMO oils those conditioners are made from, plus the pesticides those GMO crops were sprayed with. The Real Bread campaign investigated Nature's Own and other brands and found up to 26 ingredients and additives in loaves, marketed as simple wholemeal bread. 26. Real bread needs 4 ingredients. This isn't bread. This is a chemical science project shaped like bread. For seniors especially, ADA and its breakdown products are dangerous. Urethane is classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as probably carcinogenic, which is an even stronger warning than potassium bromate's possibly carcinogenic classification. That means the link to cancer is clearer and more concerning. Even though Nature's Own removed ADA specifically, the other dough conditioners they still use come with their own health risks. They're linked to digestive problems, inflammatory responses, allergic reactions, and disruption of gut bacteria, all of which are particular concerns for older adults whose digestive systems are already more sensitive and less resilient. Datem, or diacetyl tartaric acid esters of monoglycerides, is one of these questionable conditioners. It's made by combining tartaric acid with monoglycerides derived from plant oils. Studies have found that datem can increase intestinal permeability, essentially making your gut more leaky. A leaky gut allows partially digested food particles, toxins, and bacteria to escape from your intestines into your bloodstream, triggering immune responses and inflammation throughout your body. For seniors already dealing with age-related decline in gut barrier function, eating bread with datem daily could be accelerating intestinal permeability and contributing to systemic inflammation, which is linked to virtually every chronic disease, from arthritis to Alzheimer's. Monoglycerides and diglycerides are also concerning. While they're derived from fats, they're heavily processed using chemical solvents and high heat. The manufacturing process can create trans fats as byproducts. Even though these additives are listed as 0 grams of trans fat per serving due to labeling loopholes, they still contain trace amounts that add up when you're eating processed bread daily. Number 2. Hovis Mother's Pride and the palm oil problem. Hovis Mother's Pride. The name sounds homely, nostalgic, like something safe and British you could trust. But the truth is, this same loaf you grew up with has quietly turned into one of the most controversial breads on supermarket shelves. Let's start with the obvious. Palm oil. It's not banned outright in Europe, but the way it's sourced and used in products like Mother's Pride would never pass strict EU food standards. Premier Foods, the parent company behind Hovis, claims to use sustainable palm oil through the RSPO program. But here's the fine print. Only about 36% of that oil comes from verified sustainable sources. The rest is mass balanced, which basically means it's mixed with uncertified palm oil and nobody really knows where it came from. That's like saying, don't worry, some of our ingredients are clean, the rest, well, hopefully they are too. The environmental cost of that decision is huge. Palm oil plantations are one of the leading causes of deforestation in Indonesia and Malaysia. Forests that once sheltered orangutans, tigers, and thousands of other species are burned to make way for crops that end up in your budget loaf. Those same fires release millions of tons of carbon dioxide, adding to the climate crisis we're all living through. So when you buy that cheap loaf, you're not just paying less, the planet is paying the rest. But it's not just about the oil. Mother's Pride is a textbook example of the Chorleywood bread process, the high-speed industrial method the UK invented to make bread cheaper and faster. The process uses emulsifiers, preservatives, and flour improvers, many of which Europe has either restricted or outright banned. Chemicals like azodicarbonamide, used to bleach flour and improve texture, were banned in the EU years ago after being linked to respiratory problems in bakery workers and potential health effects in consumers. Some emulsifiers in these loaves have been connected to gut inflammation and metabolic issues in animal studies and preliminary human research. Mother's Pride doesn't talk about that on its packaging. They just say it's soft, fresh, and family-friendly. But that softness comes from additives, not quality. That extended shelf life comes from preservatives, not good baking. That uniform texture comes from chemical conditioners, not skilled craftsmanship. Even the people making it aren't being treated fairly. A 2018 Focus on Labour Exploitation report revealed that some bakery workers in the UK, including those producing Hovis products, faced long hours, low pay, and dangerous working conditions. Workers reported repetitive strain injuries, inadequate health and safety equipment, and pressure to work through injuries because taking time off meant losing income. So let's be honest, you might think you're saving money buying Mother's Pride, but what you're really getting is a loaf stuffed with chemicals, questionable palm oil, and exploitation baked into the system. That's not bread for families. That's a factory product pretending to be tradition. It's a symbol of everything wrong with industrialized food production, environmental destruction, worker exploitation, consumer deception, and health risks, all packaged in nostalgic marketing that appeals to your memories of simpler times that never actually existed in these products. Number 1. Supermarket own brand breads from Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, and Morrisons. Supermarket own brand breads are manufactured by the same companies we've already discussed, Allied Bakeries, Hovis, and others, but with even lower quality standards because price is the only consideration. These loaves contain the worst combinations of Europe-banned additives because they're made as cheaply as possible. Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, and Morrisons all sell value range breads that use potassium bromate treated flour, calcium propionate preservatives, synthetic dough conditioners, and bleached flour treated with chemicals Europe won't allow. Some use all of these banned substances in a single loaf. The Environmental Working Group identified over 200 products containing potassium bromate sold in UK supermarkets. Many are own brand breads that don't disclose the flour treatment on their labels because regulations don't require it. You're eating bromate residues without knowing it because the law allows companies to hide this information, which found that every single supermarket own brand wholemeal loaf they tested contained multiple flours beyond wholemeal, along with soya flour and various additives. None of the supermarkets was transparent about why these extra ingredients were necessary or what specific chemicals were used in processing. Asda told consumer groups that the L-cysteine they use in their bread, a dough conditioner that can be derived from human hair, duck feathers, or hog hair, is synthetic in their products. But the fact that they even need to clarify this tells you how disgusting the industry standards are. The fact that bread could potentially contain human hair derivatives unless specified otherwise is insane. For seniors, supermarket value bread represents the worst possible choice. You're getting the lowest quality flour, the highest concentration of chemical additives, the most aggressive processing methods, and the least transparency about what's actually in the product, all to save maybe 30 or 40 pence per loaf. Those savings aren't worth it. Your health is too important. Your remaining years are too precious. The chemicals in these breads accumulate in your tissues, suppress your immune system, damage your gut bacteria, stress your liver and kidneys, and increase your cancer risk. Every slice is a small dose of poison, and those small doses add up over time. And here's what really makes me angry about this. These supermarkets know better. They sell bread in other European countries where these additives are banned, which means they're perfectly capable of making bread without them. They just choose not to in the UK because regulations here let them get away with it. They're deliberately giving British customers inferior products with dangerous chemicals because they can, because it's cheaper, because they prioritize profit over the health of their customers. That's not business. That's betrayal of public trust. Tesco sells bread in Ireland that complies with EU regulations. Sainsbury's operates stores in several European countries. They know how to make bread without these chemicals. They just don't want to spend the extra money to do it in the UK because they know British consumers are less informed, less demanding, and more trusting of supermarket brands. And the concentration of additives in value range bread is often higher than in premium ranges. When you buy Tesco Finest or Sainsbury's Taste the Difference bread, you get slightly better ingredients because those products are marketed to more affluent, health-conscious consumers. But value range bread, marketed to families struggling financially, seniors on fixed incomes, people who can least afford health problems, gets the worst quality ingredients and the most chemical additives. It's a form of economic discrimination where your health depends on how much you can afford to spend on basic food. If you can pay more, you get less poison. If you're poor or on a pension, you get more chemicals with every meal. That's immoral. So why did Europe ban all these bread additives while the UK still allows them? The answer is different regulatory philosophies. Europe uses the precautionary principle. If there's credible scientific evidence that an ingredient might cause harm, ban it until someone proves conclusively that it's safe. The UK uses the opposite approach, inherited from the United States. Ingredients are assumed safe until there's overwhelming proof they're dangerous. It's a broken system designed to benefit corporate interests at the expense of public health. And you're the one paying the price in increased disease risk, shorter lifespan, and reduced quality of life in your senior years. It's scary, but you have choices. Buy bread from independent bakeries that use traditional methods. Look for brands that specifically advertise no additives or preservatives. Make your own bread at home. It's easier than you think and takes maybe 15 minutes of actual work. For seniors especially, the bread you eat matters enormously. Those chemicals accumulate over a lifetime and cause real damage. You've already been exposed for decades. Don't add more poison to your body now. If this video opened your eyes, share it with friends who buy these brands. Drop a comment about which bread you're switching to, and subscribe for more videos exposing what's really in your food. Stay safe out there.